Black comics, and superhero poetry. Today's conversation is going to be moderated by Cherie Jackson and Len Lawson, and we'll be hearing from the collection. The Future of Black is a groundbreaking collection highlighting the work from poets who have written verse within this growing tradition of considering the what if for these DC and Marvel characters such as Black Panther, Luke Cage, and Black Lightning as poetry. We're going to be hearing from Anastasia, Ashley, Cherie, Courtney tonight. Gary Jackson is the author of poetry collection Missing You, Metropolis, which received the 2009 Cave Canem Poetry Prize. His poems have appeared in numerous literary journals, including Callaloo, Tin House, Los Angeles Review of Books, and Crab Orchard Review. Len Lawson is the author of Chime, the chapbook Before the Night Wakes You, and co-editor of Hand in Hand, Poets Respond to Race. He has received fellowships from Tin House, Callaloo, Vermont Studio Center, Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. Contributors tonight are Anastasia, speaker and podcaster. She is the author of V and Forget It, Here in the Middle of Nowhere, and Side Notes from the Archivist, forthcoming from Amistad. Recently, she was selected by NBC News as part of the list of queer artists of color dominate 20 LGBTQ art shows. Anastasia Renée is a former Seattle Civic Poet, Hugo House Poet in Residence, and ARC Artist Fellow. Ashley M. Jones is the Poet Laureate of the state of Alabama. She holds an MFA in poetry from Florida International University, and she is the author of Magic City Gospel, Dark Thing, and Reparations Now. She was a finalist for the Ruth Lilly Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship in 2020, and her collection Reparations Now was on the long list for the 2022 Penn and Volker Award for Poetry. Fellow from the Chicago suburbs. His debut collection won the 2016 Saturnalia Books Prize, Poetry Prize selected by D.A. Powell. He began writing and performing poetry as a member of Ex Solano Project, and he was an undergraduate studies at the University of Pennsylvania. His poetry is a marriage between art and activism, a call for a more involved and empathetic understanding of the diversity of the human experience. His most recent work, Doppelganger Banger, was released last March. Cherie Renée Thomas is a multiple award-winning author and widely respected figure in the SFF. She edited the World Fantasy-winning, groundbreaking Black speculative fiction anthologies Dark Matter, 2000, the first to introduce W.E.B. Du Bois stories. She was a 2020 World Fantasy Award finalist in the Special Award for Washington, D.C. with Malka Older. 9 Bars Blues, Stories from an Ancient Future is her first all-prose collection. We're going to be starting tonight with Anastasia reading.
Hey, can you all hear me? My panelists, let me know. I am so glad to be here and in amazing company. You know, when you're getting ready for a reading, you don't really get to like shout out everybody you love because you're in the zone. But I have to say, I feel honored to be with all the panelists, and thank you, Politics and Prose, for having us tonight. So I'm gonna get it rolling in this glorious anthology. I have 3 short pieces in the anthology. I'm gonna read 2. Universe. Copycat universe. We worked on the space shuttle ship to the best of our natural ability, but she still had a slow, yellow limp and systemic pain held in her motherboard. We do not want to leave this planet, but we don't need to leave right now. The repairs on the one hand seem minimal, but on the other hand seem as if it could take years. It is hard to say in the state we are in. She has asked us, our space shuttle ship, to go on without her, as in let her rest, Let her sit, cover her, and keep going. Of course, we don't like the idea of her being tied to this earth, especially with her ankles bound to soil, especially with the tree like branches on her back. Our space shuttle ship is an irrepressible one, and we, the ones who traveled, will always be thankful. We were told to leave our third eyes in our space shuttle ship in their cases with their own mothers. The mothers of the third eyes see it all, and they have told us not to sleep. For this reason, we have been asked to avoid most things entertaining. Apocalypse 400. Say what? The new girl arrived with her hands inside her mouth and her voice in her pocket. And you might think this is just a cool way of telling the story, dear reader. I am telling you the truth. And when we asked her all the usual questions, she pointed to her left pocket for the answers. And there we found her voice box decorated in black paper and red glittering stars. The voice coming from the voice box was not at all what we expected. But then again, what does anyone expect from a voice box? What does anyone expect from a time such as this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anastasia. I think it's my turn next. So hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here reading with these awesome writers. Also very glad to have my copy of The Future of Black, Afrofuturism, Black Comics, and Superhero Poetry, which you can purchase from Politics and Prose. There's a link in the chat. And you do want this anthology. I mean, the poems are amazing, but also the paper is amazing. You just have to get a copy to see what I'm saying. It's unlike any other paper that you've ever had before. So I'm going to read one of the poems that I have in this collection, and it's about Lois Lane. There is a particular issue of Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, issue number 106, in which Lois Lane turns into a Black woman. I could spend a long time telling you the entire story, but you should maybe go read this interesting issue for yourself. So in this poem, I wanted to react to all the foolishness that goes on in this particular issue of Lois Lane. And so I used the words from the actual comic book to construct my poem. Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, number 106. On this daily planet, my life is good luck. All supermen at my service. I should get the Pulitzer Prize on the backs of Metropolis's Black community. Wait, tenements perplex me. How can I break through this plague, their suspicious speech, these slick-mouthed babies and their knock slam slang? Homeless ghosts on this daily planet. What is the reason for their weary report? Look how the sun shines sweet and pretty on their rat-infested slums. It's okay, I'm right. I'm whitey, never forget. Little Africa is dejected, a neighborhood of frustration. I'll step into this machine and transform, a startling switch. Black for a day only, the hum zoom of the world staring, the smoke of white fragility, its gloomy fire trap. Black is beautiful. Have you met it before, reporter? The eternal struggle of life against death by darkness, a life of please, look me straight in the eye. The constant confrontation of being Black and alive in a white man's world. A universal outsider. So alien, even Superman couldn't risk loving you. Thank you.
All right, I guess I'll keep the party going. But thanks everybody for joining us tonight and for having a little bit of fun with us. I'm going to be reading a selection from the anthology as well. And this one is titled Elegy for Killmonger with My Own Pain Entering Frame. And this is in response or rather evokes the presentation of the character from the film Black Panther rather than the comics, but I just wanted to call that out for folks. Elegy for Killmonger with My Own Pain Entering Frame. Bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships because they knew death was better than bondage. Yeah, I heard about what you said, but nah. We both know the African lost in America, had to come and claim your body. And to level with you, homie, when I got word, no shock shot through me like the lightning of revelation. I figured it was always going to end this way for you, bruh. The child of pain is obviously pain as well. Couldn't dream of being anything more than its sorry daddy was. Yo, my baddie. I'm still really sorry about your pops. He seemed, to me, even as a shorty, to be a solid man, present, principled, dignified, almost like royalty dipped in black paint. Part of me thinks he'd have made a decent king if a king was something to believe in, which I don't believe it is. I mean, just look at what kings did to the block, to the world. Hell, look at what the idea of a throne did to you. Your entire body printed with the braille of insatiable ego and ambition. And rage, too, what morphs us men like steroids do, turns the darkest of us, the me's and the you's, into atom bombs without detonation clocks, erasing anybody within range of our hands or their hired guns. At some point, I feel we start losing track of whether the supremacy does this to us or we do it to ourselves. But I've thought on it a bit, and I've come to believe the truth has two faces, the one we hate and the one we hate. I wonder which face flashed before your eyes with the last kick of the war drum. If there's a God for gutter folk, hopefully it was hers you saw. Homegirl, forever down for you, ride or die, love the mess out of you, I thought, hoped. I said before I wasn't surprised, but that was only true until I saw her body wasn't here laying next to yours. Y'all curled up together in power like quotation marks. I don't know if she got out or got in the middle of it, but I had a soft spot for her standing by your buck wild ass, even when you was on some absolute bull. When you should have behaved like you'd read a damn book in your life. And I know you read many, because I caught you once in second grade and clowned you all the way to MIT. My favorite book coming up was the autobiography of Malcolm X, because it was supposed to be, you know, the half I finished anyway. Remember that, homie? Is that too far back? I can't recall when we last spoke, honestly. Maybe I've been dead too long myself, but I believe it's been just long enough for me to forgive you for it, enough to swoop you, take you to the other side of the sun, where we can ball pick up like that's all life is, like it used to be when we were misspelled boys. Thank you.
Wow.
Well, thank you so much. It is an honor to read with these fine poets and to be included in such a beautiful book. And I hope you do get a copy of it because it's gorgeous. The poetry, um, the order of the poems are amazing, and the art. So one of my favorite things growing up was watching Batman with my grandmother. And so this poem comes from the most iconic Catwoman there ever was. Eartha Kitt reflects on Catwoman. Some man has always wanted to lay me down, but he never stayed to pick me up again. So I learned to make fear my friend, made a temple of bone, my mind hard back pews, regret the ceiling of my skull. I scaled the night, my mouth full of the cathedral sky. I spoke in tongues, back arch and leather shine, blood claw and tooth divine. I wrapped my tail around the throat of desire. Many tried to hollow my spirit, usher their hungers into the bowl of my brain, spilling their need like blood-stained wine against the fabric of my full altar. But I refused their offerings. Still, when the moon shimmer cast her spell over the city's devilish light, I walked back through the shadowed walls of reverie, scrape and scratch the old wounds and purr, just to hear myself remember and bleed. If there is darkness, after my favorite characters in my favorite comic book, the Dora Milaje of Black Panther. The women carry broadaxes. Side by side, they come singing, spear to spear, iron striking cottonwood, cotton humming back, the waters churn, the pump and shuttle sweep the warp like waves against green-lit shores. They come from the heart of it, each stroke covering the space between, from where they were torn to where they trained together, to where they must go. The women in steps see only the next woman's back. Together they live the story, a story of blood, the rising tide of iron slicing its way through flesh. If the sky's dark fabric is pierced by stars, they sing the songs of wombs, of the earth giving birth to herself, of herself giving birth to earth. There among the green, twisting, fertile things, they buzz with seeing. They blink back, feeling the wind and their weight of the flat toes pressing into darkness. Into the rhythms of the earth, they step, come, sing together, share the same breath, share the same death. The world is vast and wild, and they travel wary but with no fear, as they know none have ever traveled alone in it. Tethered first to mothers, now they are tethered to themselves, to the sisterly beat pulse, pulsing in the next woman's heart. If there is darkness, they sing the light. They sing the songs of wombs. They sing the songs of wombs. Thank you.
Take it away, Lynn.
Yeesh, this is the part where we have to talk. My God, that was incredible. That was fire. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So thank you, everyone who's joining us on a Friday evening to listen to poetry. What's wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. It's great to hear everybody. Gary, it's like what we've been talking about all these months is like coming to fruition. It's amazing. Like when we look at these poems, or like when I read these poems initially, just the ones that we've heard this evening, you know, I get a certain picture in my mind, but then to just hear it from the artists themselves, it just brought a new dimension to them. So for those of you that aren't familiar with The Future of Black, this is a poetry anthology on Afrofuturism, Black comics, superhero works, and you know, just everything that encompasses all of that. So we weren't trying to like limit anyone's work. We asked far and wide. We invited poets to submit, and then we, you know, sent out a call for poets to submit work that was within this genre. So personally, I just felt that this is something that poetry, especially like African American poetry, was kind of missing, like a collection of works that celebrates this genre of work. And of course, I think with when we're talking about Afrofuturism, especially like second wave Afrofuturism in like 21st century, really got like a boost or a shot in the arm with the film Black Panther in 2018. So even before that, you know, this was a thing, but I think a lot of people have gravitated toward this, especially when we see in reality unarmed Black people constantly being destroyed, murdered, killed, especially by police. I think that this is a genre that helps writers, poets, filmmakers, artists, visual artists, and just all manner of creators to sort of make sense of, you know, the world that's around it, or imagine a future where, you know, we have, you know, unmitigated, unlimited like power and control over ourselves. Not saying we don't in this reality, but to just imagine more realities is something that's incredible to think about. And I mean, just what you heard this evening, when you allow yourself to be in that space, I think it's liberating, in fact. So, Gary, would you like to speak about, you know, just your thoughts on putting the anthology together, and, you know, for you personally, because you know, we're both in South Carolina, and, you know, we talk a good, or have talked a good bit about, you know, your work in particular, and your work in regards to you know, superhero poetry, and you know, just how do you think that your work and the works that we see here are sort of speaking to one another, and just your experience with the future of Black?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Thank you, Lynn, for that intro, and thank you all. Like,
Was that an
for
intro? I think it was
reading.
like just me talking, but
That was yeah. You kind of introduced the whole anthology, right?
okay.
But yeah, you hyped us up, which is always good.
I'm a hype man.
Yeah, but thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ashley, Anastasia, Cherie, Courtney, for your wonderful poems and for contributing to this book. I was just thinking, like a week ago, I did an interview back home. Like, home is Kansas, even though I'm living in South Carolina. And they're asking me if I had any advice for like other, like particularly students of color who are currently experiencing probably the same racial isolation that I experienced when I grew up in Topeka, Kansas. And I just kind of said, you know, kind of off the cuff, like, yeah, you find your people. Yes, shout out to Kansas. Somebody understands in the chat. But yeah, I was like, find your people and remember, ignore people who say that you are too Black or not Black enough, or whatever identity or label they want to put on you. I was like, those are probably my best kind of words of wisdom, even though those are things people already know. And the more I got to think about it, and kind of thinking about this reading and this book, I feel like in a way this anthology is kind of exemplifying both of those things, right? Like this idea that you find your people, and my people are not necessarily just Black, but my people, you know, we would go out and get in trouble, and, you know, and do shit that we probably shouldn't have been doing, but we also did LAN parties, and we played role-playing games, and we read comic books, you know. Like, my people are misfits, right? My people are other. But my people know how to have fun. And my people know how to see themselves in a world even when the world refuses to see them. And I'd like to think that the contributors and the wonderful artists in this collection are my people, and I hope y'all feel the same way. Um, and then the other thing about, labels, I know Lynn and I, we talked a lot about this, and Cynthia as well, when we were putting this together, about how we were really trying hard to not, and it wasn't difficult to do this, but we were very aware that we did not want to kind of showcase just one way of being Black, right? And so this idea that there are multiple aesthetics, identity is not monolithic, Blackness is not just one thing. And I feel like this book is kind of the perfect example of that. Like just tonight, like hearing the range of voices and talent. And yeah, we like comic books, we like superheroes, but we like other shit too. And you see that in a lot of these poems. They're not all about superheroes, though I love superheroes. I kind of wish Courtney would have read that Grand Theft Auto poem too, but that's all right. It wasn't enough time. But we like a lot of things. There's poems in here about video games, about Gucci Mane, about Sun Ra. There's poems in here that speak to kind of pure speculative sci-fi, other poems that speak to just living in this world and how just existing today is a miracle in and of itself. And so that's the other thing I just love about this book. Now I feel like I'm blabbing. I mean, I don't, I could say more about how Lynn and I first met in a bar, and Lynn he was like, I got this idea, it was before reading it. And I don't know if anybody here's even heard that story, but Lynn kind of approached me in this Charleston bar called the Griffin, which is right down the street from where you was about to read, Lynn. And you was just like, I got this idea, and I was like, all right, let's have it.
This crazy, ridiculous idea that no one is probably gonna like get behind, but continue.
Yeah, no, and you was like, and I was like, well, who else you thinking about? And you said, thinking about Cynthia Manick up in New York, and I was like, okay, I know Cynthia. Like, that seems like a good team, and you could maybe say more, Lynn, but I was taken with it. I think at that bar, like after your 10-minute pitch, I was like, I'm in. Let's do it. But yeah,
we got him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I really like what you said about Blackness not being a monolith, and I think that's kind of been like a rallying cry kind of for like the last few years, because I think that's an unstated or subconscious mindset that people have, that if you're Black, you have to be this or that, or just what I see on TV or what I see on the news, or so yeah, I think that is a theme that resonates through here. I was just thinking, like, everybody that has read here has multiple poems in the anthology, so everybody has different I mean, so everybody that read, all our contributors that read tonight are like evidence of that Blackness is not a monolith, because not one poem that they have in the anthology is alike, I don't think. So I want to engage them because they're waiting patiently. I want to talk about, like, I was just jotting notes down as everybody was reading. So Anastasia, you had like a few poems, and I think what I was hearing from the work as I read and reread your work in the anthology was just like, the Black woman being voiceless, or, like when you're speaking about the spaceship, I kind of saw like that signifying on Black women, like being caretakers and nurturers and all of that. I was hoping you could speak more about that. And of course, like, when you have a girl with her voice in her pockets, it's like, it's right there for you. So what were you thinking about when you were, constructing that poem, or more poems related to that?
Thank you for asking. I think you're exactly right. Like, for me, the Black woman is the motherboard. She's also the girl with the voice in the pocket. She's also the mother with the third eye. She's also the masculinity represented in the piece. I think for me,
She's everything.
everything. And I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, sort of with the isolation too, finding my people. But when we talk about super heroes, super sheroes, super they, super them, super everybody, I don't really think it was drilled into my head that like you're one of those too. And what I was starting to realize is that a lot of attributions and characteristics I was ascribing to super people, Black people have. We can
Come
see,
on.
we're intuitive, we're magical, we are herbologists, we are orators and oracles and griots. It was just like, duh, we are superheroes. What am I looking for? But it took a long time to arrive at that. And so I think in my work, I want to make it clear that the everyday thing is also super. We are we are super. We have these powers, whether they be small or large, but we have it all. So that's what I was going for in the piece. And that means some things are good, some things are bad. You know, that's part of the territory for being a superhero, super hero, super person. It's not always going to be easy, but you are still magical and great. So I was trying to gravitate toward the mundane, but the super.
Yeah, I think the quote unquote bad or the weak or the not so like lovely characteristics are what make uh those people relatable, especially like superheroes, like not thinking of them as being one dimensional. And I think that relate helps people like relate, especially like, in this entertainment culture where like superhero films dominate now. It's like, we want to see like strong, powerful characters on film and, help us escape our own lives. But at the same time, you get to see them at their not so great moments as well. I know that those poems kind of relate to Ashley's poems a little bit with the one in particular about Lois Lane, which I think people in the chat are going crazy about that one. I think with that poem and relating it to the comics. So I know a lot of Ashley's work as well. It's, not just Ashley, but in particular relates to Black feminism, womanism, and just seeing Black women as not just, manual laborers or, service people, or even like, putting them on this pedestal of like, what am I trying to say? Body issues or things like that, or just, parts of the body that people want to see and, obtain. So I guess you could probably say it better than I've tried to, but, were you thinking about that when you saw the Lois Lane comic, or thinking about that? Because that's an interesting one to try to tackle. So, and especially with a hero like Superman. So,
Right. Yeah.
can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the PhD question, Dr. Lawson. It's a very layered question. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I will say it has been my goal to talk about the humanity of Black women, because I mean, Black people in general have been trying to just prove that we're human for a very long time, or at least let everybody else wake up to that fact. And for a Black woman like myself, we are constantly battling being misnamed, misrepresented, mistreated. People want to wear us like a skin or like a coat or something. They want to put on their Blackness and then take it off when it's, convenient for them. So that's always in the back of my mind. And as far as this particular poem about Lois Lane, I was just outdone by the existence of this comic, first of all. Like, to see it, and y'all do look up this comic book, you can see images from it. I think you see the whole thing online if you search around. To see Lois Lane, first of all, assume that she would get a Pulitzer Prize. It's in like the first page. I'm going to get a Pulitzer Prize if I go to Little Africa and unearth the gritty underbelly. Like, what? Are our lives just something to be profited off of? Is our existence something to look at as if, through, a like an aquarium, like we're just, oh, look at the Black people, how they exist. That's how she treated it. And then to see her step into a chamber and become a Black person, wild. People are doing that now as well. We see them on Instagram, on television, everywhere you want to look. In academia, my goodness, we see people pretending to be Black. And in this comic book, the funny part is like her being Black is not like the end. That's just part of the story. The real climax of this issue is a scene with her and Superman. And she asks him something like, would you still love me if I couldn't change back? That's the whole point of this comic book, is that, oh, Black people are so strange, so unlovable. Would Superman even love Lois Lane if she were Black? What a horrible fate that would be if she couldn't get back to white. That just really struck a chord, because that is something people literally think now, that loving a Black person is somehow just the most wild thing anyone could imagine. It's, you know, you have jungle fever if you know, want to date a Black person, or, you know, you're kind of stepping out of your comfort zone, or you're rebelling against your parents or whatever. But the truth of the matter is, we were always lovable already. If you didn't know that, that's not our problem. That's you. You need to work that out within yourself. And also Lois Lane, he doesn't really love you anyways, because I don't know if they ever got married. I mean, I don't know. It's not about your Blackness in this case. It's just you. So anyway, that's what I was thinking about as I wrote this poem.
Phenomenal. Gary is like about to explode. Can you like shed some light on that episode? Because Gary is like a comic book encyclopedia, so I know he knows like what you're talking about.
I don't know. I don't own that comic, but I've read it like Ashley, and I will co-sign everything Ashley just said. It is an incredible comic to read if you've not seen it. I feel like too, doesn't
it's like
Superman,
when they hide way in the back of the archives, you know?
Yeah, like I think it's pretty cheap to buy, or you can just get it for free probably. I'm sure, like Ashley said, it's archived somewhere. But Ashley, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Superman also say something at the end like I already know what it's like to be different because I'm an alien or something like that? So
yeah, which is not the same, because he's passing.
Yeah, I was like, so there's this weird equation Superman makes, like, I understand what it's like to be Black because I'm Superman. At the end I was like, what? Like,
no, you don't die when they shoot you, Superman.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god,
he's like the best kind of alien who can like blend in with just putting on a pair of glasses. It's like what
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to worry about anything. I'm good.
Yeah.
And I saw a documentary one time that was saying like that's how he sees humanity, or that's how he sees the world. He sees humanity as like weak, this Clark Kent type of person who's like happy-go-lucky and, you know, blends in with everybody and, you know, just tries to remain like completely like one-dimensional. So that coming from somebody who's like all-powerful, that's how he sees like us. So how much more to be seen as like a Black person is, you know, it's too much to think about on a Friday night. I'm sorry. But it's wild, you know. Yeah. So I want to shift the conversation to Courtney, who just, you know, blew us away with your Killmonger poem, and just related it back to your own experience. I think that's probably one of the most powerful pieces about that work is, you know, bringing it back to your own experience and how, you know, you see the Killmonger like in your own life. But, you know, there's always like this interesting binary between like T'Challa and Killmonger, which is like the same binary between Professor Xavier and Magneto, which is like the same binary between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. So would you like to speak more on that and like what you know, who's right and who's wrong? Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I have to try to get back there mentally because Ashley took me out when she put this image in my head of Lois still waiting on that ring. I just can't get it out of my head. So I got to come back to that later because that made me crack up. But to your question, Lynn, Yeah, the whole crux of like, and the whole reason I think why I ended up writing that Killmonger poem was kind of like related to what you were just saying. I remember the discourse kind of like after Black Panther dropped, and I remember the think pieces, and I remember what everybody was, saying on Facebook and Twitter and whatever about Killmonger. Killmonger being the hero of the movie, or Killmonger being
People
right.
love them.
Oh, people love him, and there's no surprise why so many folks have that affinity for the character. But what I wanted to trouble was that affinity for the character based upon the text of the film itself, like what happens in the film. And on the one hand, I think as Black folks, right, living in America or outside of America, uh, I think that the rhetoric that Killmonger brings evokes a lot of the ideas and the thoughts and the attitudes of a lot of revolutionaries who are looked up to, right? And rightfully so, because I think we deserve revolution in the sense of we deserve a world that is different than the one we have. We deserve a world where we can imagine true freedom and liberation for Black people, right? So like that is the magnetizing element of Killmonger in the film. That's why we relate to him. He speaks like a lot of us talk. He carries the same anger and rage at the systems that a lot of us have. However, at the same time, he does some things that are just like that really don't dovetail with what I think revolution actually is, right? So there's that very, very quick, introduction, and then dismissal by way of him killing of his girlfriend or supposed girlfriend. There is the burning of the source of the Black Panther's power, right? To ensure that there is no one that can eventually rise to oppose him. And so while I think a lot of what he says is filled with elements of the truth as we understand and live every day, I also think he as a character, if you just look at how it plays out on film, it speaks to, I think, a lot of the danger in trusting a revolution that is that ultimately is somewhat unprincipled and that is carried through the vision of charismatic leaders. I think revolution is tricky because once you displace power, other power tries to rise in its place. And that's the history of revolution across the world. But when we say revolution, I don't think that's what we're talking about, right? I don't think we're talking about the reinstitution just with the power vested in our hands, or at least that's not the revolution we should be talking about. And so that's what I wanted to trouble with the poem by both expressing an empathy, right, towards Killmonger, and a sense of understanding and even camaraderie in a certain ways, but troubling that with the harm perpetrated against the people, including the speaker of the poem, that he's apparently supposed to be standing up for. And that's, so when you ask who's right and who's wrong, I was like, well, if I had to say, I'd say he said the right things was coming from the wrong person's mouth.
Yeah, for sure. Gary, I had that question for you too. Like, does the Killmonger from the film like translate to the screen the way it does in the comics to you?
Not really, but I like how I'm like the background like archivist here, archivist with the like. I don't know if I like. Has anybody else read like old Black Panther comics? Because he's kind of goofy in like the 70s and 80s. Killmonger. I can't remember, but he wears like a really weird kind of like village people outfit, like a lot of leather, and he's showing a lot of skin.
Not to mention the mask,
Yeah, well, and he's got like a weird, like kind of mullet Jerry
the
curl thing
headdress.
going on. But I mean, that's the funny thing though about. I mean, this is more about just monetization of like Black culture than anything. But like after that movie came out, Marvel kind of revamped Killmonger to make him more like the charismatic, kind of leader that Courtney was just talking about. So yeah, I mean, I don't, yeah, the film's version is like definitely a better take in a lot of ways. Um, but I mean, Cherie, if you want to jump in too, because I mean, you write about the Dora Milaje too, for that matter. So I don't know, in terms of like how you view the film Black Panther versus the comics, or if you see differences there, or just what kind of, pulled you to write about that aspect of Black Panther too. But yeah, because I'm happy just hearing what y'all have to say. Or maybe not.
Cherie, you're muted.
Oh, Cherie, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't have any strong feelings about Killmonger in particular. The movie, Marvel's cinematic universe is not canon. It's Marvel's cinematic universe. So when you're talking about characterizations of T'Challa or even Killmonger, it's very different from the origin stories, particularly Panther's Rage. But yeah, so it was written in the 60s by two white men. So it's going to have that old sensibility. And the things that we think about when we think of the universe are very different than what was created. I mean, we didn't get the Dora Milaje, which I write about in my poem, until Christopher Priest created them. And I believe that was late 80s, early 90s. We didn't get Cherie until Reginald Hudlin created her until later, and she wasn't a scientist necessarily, So there's a lot of reimagining of the women characters that happen decades later, right? And it's right on time, which is, I think it's so the whole world, the universe they've created is so ripe for reimagining. And you've had all these different writers, from Roxane Gay to Nnedi Okorafor to Yona Harvey and others, who have been writing and trying to fill in some of that philosophical space that it opens up for us in terms of imagining what it really means to be female or woman in the world, in my poem, I hope to talk about the fact that they have deep relationships with each other as sisters and as lovers, right? Something that has not yet been explored in the cinematic universe, but who knows? Forever, Wakanda Forever is coming out, so we'll see what happens with that. But based on the Dahomey women of West Africa, there is a lot of room to explore, what would happen to the young people, girls who are taken from their towns at very young age and told that they are symbolic, the brides of the king, but they are also the actual guards of the king and don't have actual families of their own, right? They are wed to the kingdom. And when they walked down the streets, a bell was rang before they walked, so that you would know that these warriors were coming, and you could not look at them. You couldn't look at them. They were supposed to be so fierce, but also they're supposed to be so sacred. So there's just a lot around that. The reason why I love the Black Panther universe is because it does give you that opportunity to have whole stories that are people by Black women, which is not common for a lot of the other intellectual properties that are out there. It's not a lot of space for that. And when you do have them, it doesn't always go the way that we would hope for them, right? Just to say that, the least about that. But yes.
Cherie, I'm so grateful that you're here, because you are like a pioneer in Afrofuturism like studies. literature, works, etc. And so since I have you here in the zoo, I do want to ask you, like, what in like, you know, a few minutes, like, what do you feel is like the state of Afrofuturism as far as you know, its study as far as literature, or also like, you know, all different genres, you know, as you see like different films emerging or like small screen things, and you know, what are your feelings about it, and is it in good hands or should we be concerned?
Our intellectual creations are always start off in our hands, right? And then they get, you know, mainstream and commercialized. So we always have to, you know, I think learn the lessons that we've always had to do, whether it's, you know, looking at how hip hop and rap saved the music industry, right? But a lot of artists were kind of left out in you know, in very significant ways. We can think about our impact on country music, right? And the origins. Almost anything that's classically American music-wise has roots in Black culture. For me, Afrofuturism is like all of the other innovations we create. It comes out of the underground. It comes out of the margins. And so by the time it gets mainstream, we have innovated and created something else. By the time they catch on to that, we will be creating something else. So for me, our culture has just now catching on to something that we've been having a lot of fun with for a good long time, right? W.E.B. Du Bois wrote science fiction. You know, while he was looking at the souls of Black folks, he was thinking about Jesus Christ in Texas. You know, Jesus would show up and get lynched. He was thinking about what would happen, you know, if a comet came to Earth and, you know, there was one Black man left and possibly one Black woman, you know, how would they, you know, interact? How would they go with the future? And of course, then another lynch mob shows up towards the end of that story. So we're still facing some of the same questions about full citizenship and human dignity on our various shores here in America, in North America, across the diaspora, and in Africa itself. What's exciting to me now is that while we're still doing all the first collection of Black speculative fiction poetry, right? Black speculative poetry, you know, the first volume of this, that, and the other, we are also creating a space where it's not inevitable anymore that we are extinct, which was something that was a common thread when I was growing up, when we were growing up in the films and in the cartoons and movies and things. It wasn't always assumed that there would be a Black family, however you define that family. We weren't there peopling the future. And with Afrofuturism that people are creating now, it's not just about the digital divide. Do we have access to the technology, but how are we using all of this to have healthy lives, to survive and to thrive in the future? And that's what's so fun about it, right? So we get to play, and we're the ones that are playing it. Black Panther showed that other cultures want to see these images. They are hungry for it, and they want to create their own as well. This is something we've always known. We've always known.
Consumers.
We've always known, right? We've just been gaslit about it, right? There isn't a Black horror movie that never made money. There isn't a single one that exists that hasn't made money, right? It just doesn't happen. So if we are allowed to do what we've always done, which is to create and innovate and explore and imagine, you know, we're going to take the world in many different Afrofutures, many different ways. I'm excited to see African writers embracing the genre in the field and doing magnificent work with it. There was a time when they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, to be honest. You know, you weren't going to get a Booker Prize or Heinemann Prize or the Kane Prize if you were, you know, considered writing genre, not literary work. But now there isn't that conversation as much anymore, right? That you can do all these amazing things in the genre. So that's what I'm excited about. So I think we should just be prepared for it to get, you know, shaped into something else while we're creating the next thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I try not to worry about that, but I'm just trying to enjoy the moment and be present in it, and you know, have something to tell my grandkids that it was beautiful, and hopefully it will still be beautiful. we could have you just talk for like another hour just about all of those things, and I would be great to listen. But I'm just grateful for all of you to share your work in the anthology and to make it what it is. We would be nothing without your work in it, and we're just excited for the places that all of this work has been going. So we appreciate all of your voices and all of our other contributors. Shout out to our third editor, Cynthia Manick, who's not with us this evening, but she is definitely like hosting other things related to our anthology. So we have more events on tap. So just look for us or our publisher Blair Press or social media to find out where our next thing is going to be, and just all of the happenings of our contributors. They are many, so just tap in and figure out where they're going to be and what they're into, and you will enjoy it, I'm sure. So I'm going to turn it over to Aisha.
So much, Lynn and Gary, for moderating, and Courtney and Anastasia, Ashley, Cherie, for your readings. Honestly, this discussion was amazing. Like Len said, I would love to listen to another hour of it. But in the meantime, folks can purchase a copy of the book from our chat feature and on our website. Or if you're local, just come drop by, say hello, and grab a copy of this collection on our Diverse Voices table. Nice. Gotcha. But have and stay well read. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you,
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.